particularly in 1 Chronicles 15:13. While recounting the story of David bringing the ark again, it says, "Because you did not carry it the first time, the Lord our God broke out against us, because we did not seek him according to the rule." After reconsidering why the previous attempt failed and why such a terrible thing happened, David concluded that it was because they did not follow the method God had set. The Levites were supposed to carry it on their shoulders, 4 men carrying it, but they violated that regulation and pulled it on a cart. Regarding that as the error, when they brought it the second time from the house of Obed-Edom, it is recorded that they brought it according to the method originally set by God. Analyzing this word, we often conclude that we must listen to what God says rather than following our own way. And we must be sensitive to the words God gives us rather than our preferred methods.
However, Pastor Eugene Peterson once offered a different analysis. He suggested that it might have been due to spiritual pride. Who was Uzzah? As the son of Abinadab's house, he was the one who had been keeping and managing the ark all this time. The analysis suggests that, at some point, while managing and keeping the ark, pride began to creep in. Instead of standing before God with constant humility and fear, he looked at the ark and thought, "I am the one who manages the ark. I am the one who protects the ark." Because he had become so accustomed to it, his heart grew proud. Instead of prostrating himself and seeking God's protection, he felt that because he was so familiar with it, he now had to protect God. This proud heart led him to touch the ark carelessly, and this lack of humility brought about the disaster.
What did David do when this disaster occurred? 2 Samuel 6:9 records. And David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?" So David was not willing to take the ark of the Lord into the city of David. But David took it aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. Everything came to a halt at that moment. What was the very first thought David had? He had a pious desire that it would be good to bring the ark to his city to worship, pray, and live closer to God. But while trying to bring the ark, he encountered a disaster.
In that situation, fear entered David's heart. He thought the ark would be a blessing, but in the moment, it seemed to have become a disaster and a curse. He gave up on bringing the ark out of fear. This is the part we must examine and pay attention to today. Is such a stopping the right choice? The heart that sought to bring the ark had a good motive, but a sudden disaster struck that good motive, and he collapsed before that sudden calamity. However, the right attitude we should have in such a moment is not to stop, but to analyze where and what went wrong, to seek God's will, and to ask, "God, what must we fix? What must we do?" I believe the right direction we should choose is to change our lives and continue that good work.
Regrettably, David froze on the spot. He simply ceased. When the ark, which he thought was a blessing, felt like a disaster, he just stopped. But think about it for a moment. Is the ark a disaster? Not at all. 2 Samuel 6:11 records. And the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. Remarkably, while the ark was housed at Obed-Edom's home, during those 3 months, God poured out blessings upon his household. Eventually, David tried again, changing his method, realizing, we must not pull it with a new cart, but the Levites must carry it. He finally brought the ark into the city of David.
One of the lessons we can gain here is that while we may encounter disasters while doing good, encountering such a disaster is not a reason to stop. Because we long for God, we make so many good attempts and attempts of faith. So many believers make efforts of faith with resolutions to live according to God's will. However, we often mistakenly think that once we decide to do something good, everything will go smoothly and easily. But that is not the case. Terrible things, like someone dying while laughing, can happen. Situations so baffling that we can hardly endure them unfold before us.
What should we do then? It is possible that the cause of the ambush lies within us. A work started with a good motive might encounter problems because a wrong method was used midway. At other times, even if we have done nothing wrong, various problems can certainly arise. In those times, we must not stop. This is because the ark itself was not a disaster, but a blessing, grace, and happiness. We must not let our hearts be crushed by a disaster we suddenly encounter.
While we live, crises find us when we thought we would only be happy, and we might face sarcasm even when we seek to serve the Lord. In those times, we mostly choose to stop right there. However, I believe we need eyes of faith that can see the blessing even when we encounter disaster, rather than despairing. When the ark was touched carelessly, it looked like a disaster, but while it was at Obed-Edom's house, blessing and God's grace came upon that family. When we encounter a disaster-like situation, we must not give up but examine ourselves once more to see where the cause of the problem lies. We must see what we need to repent of before God and become those who faithfully persist in God's good and pleasing will.
In fact, that was how God treated us. When God created us and placed us in this world, He wanted us to live happily according to His will. However, we went the wrong way, committed sin, and turned into something cursed. Yet, God did not give up as He looked at us. To save us, He gave His only Son to the cross. And He restored us. Perhaps there are times when your heart feels stifled because everything is difficult. There will be times when our children, who should give us happiness, cause us heartache. At times, even when we try to exert ourselves for the Lord, it might feel painful. However, I pray that we all may be those who exert ourselves even more in good works in those moments, rather than giving up.
This is the message preached by Reverend Cookson Lee. Thank you for listening.